I was standing on an underground auction block in a silk slip that barely covered my size 18 curves, listening to the gavel come down on my life for $5 million. The buyer, the ruthless head of the Rossi crime family. He bought me to destroy my father, but the real twist, he refuses to let me go. My name is Clara Pendleton. For 24 years, I lived an exceptionally quiet, invisible life. I wasn't the kind of girl who turned heads, and I certainly wasn't the kind of girl wars were fought over. I am fat, soft-bellied, thick-thighed, and entirely unremarkable to the Manhattan elite circles my father, Arthur Pendleton, so desperately catered to. While my father ran Pendleton Wealth Management, rubbing elbows with billionaires and politicians, I spent my days as a junior art restorer at a dusty gallery in Soho, content to blend into the background. I knew my father was a cold man. I knew he prioritized money over everything, including the memory of my late mother. But I never knew he was washing money for the Cosa Nostra, and I certainly never knew he had lost $50 million of their money in a botched offshore hedge fund. The reality of my father's double life crashed into mine on a rainy Tuesday in October. I was walking back to my apartment in Astoria, Queens, carrying a bag of groceries. The streetlights were flickering, casting long, warped shadows across the wet pavement. A black Cadillac Escalade pulled up onto the curb, blocking the crosswalk. I didn't even have time to scream. Two men in dark, tailored suits stepped out. One grabbed my arms, his grip like iron bands, while the other clamped a chemical-soaked rag over my mouth. The sickly sweet smell of chloroform invaded my lungs, and the world faded to black. When I woke up, I wasn't in a dark, damp basement. I was in a brightly lit, opulent dressing room that smelled of expensive perfume and fear. There were other women there. Most of them looked like supermodels, tall, impossibly thin, with terrified, hollow eyes. They were crying silently as women in severe black uniforms painted their faces and shoved them into barely their lingerie. Then there was me. A cruel-faced woman with a tight French twist grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging into my flesh. "This one is a joke," she muttered to her colleague, looking me up and down with blatant disgust. "Put her in the red silk. Maybe someone likes them heavy." They forced me into a crimson silk slip dress. It clung to every curve, every roll, every soft part of my body that I usually hid beneath oversized sweaters. I was shivering, humiliated, and completely paralyzed by terror. Where was I? Why was I here? I kept waiting for my father to burst through the doors and save me, using his wealth and connections to fix this misunderstanding. I was pushed down a long, velvet-lined hallway until we reached a pair of heavy oak doors. Beyond them, I could hear the murmur of deep voices, the clinking of crystal glasses, and the sharp, terrifying sound of a wooden gavel. "Move!" a guard barked, shoving me forward as the doors swung open. The light blinded me for a moment. When my vision cleared, I realized I was standing on a raised circular stage in the center of a massive, smoke-filled ballroom. The room was packed with men in tuxedos, their faces obscured by the dim, moody lighting of the chandelier above. This wasn't a party. It was a meat market. "Next up, we have a unique acquisition," announced a man standing at a podium. He had a thick Eastern European accent and a cold reptilian smile. "Lot number 42. Clara, the beloved, pampered daughter of Arthur Pendleton." A collective murmur rippled through the crowd. Some men laughed. "Pendleton's girl looks like he fed her well on our dime," a voice sneered from the front row. "I'm not paying for excess baggage," another yelled out, sparking a chorus of cruel laughter. Tears, hot and fast, spilled down my cheeks. I wrapped my arms around my stomach, trying to make myself smaller, trying to hide the body they were so casually dissecting. I wasn't just being sold. I was being mocked, paraded as a joke, to humiliate my father. "Do I hear 50,000? The auctioneer called out, clearly unenthusiastic. Silence. The men drank their scotch and looked at me with varying degrees of disgust and apathy. My heart hammered against my ribs. What happens if no one buys you at an illegal human auction? Do they kill you? 50,000 for Pendleton's daughter, a prime piece of leverage. The auctioneer tried again. "I'll give you 10 grand just to take her out of my sight." A man in the second row laughed. I squeezed my eyes shut, wishing the floor would open up and swallow me. I was nothing. I was worthless even to monsters. Then a voice cut through the smoky air. It wasn't a yell. It was low quiet and possessed a quiet authority that instantly silenced the entire ballroom. 5 million. The room went dead silent. The auctioneer's jaw actually dropped. I opened my eyes and looked toward the back of the room. A man stood up from a velvet booth. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and moved with the terrifying grace of an apex predator. As he stepped into the light, my breath caught in my throat. He was devastatingly handsome, with sharp cheekbones, midnight dark hair, and eyes that looked like shattered obsidian. He wasn't looking at the auctioneer, and he wasn't looking at the laughing men. He was looking dead at me. $5 million. He repeated his voice, echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "And if anyone here laughs at her again, I will personally cut out their tongue." The auctioneer fumbled with his gavel, his hands shaking. "So sold. Sold to Mr. Gabriel Rossi, the Rossi family, the most violent, powerful syndicate on the East Coast. My father had lost their money, and now the devil himself had just bought me. The handover was clinical and swift. I was escorted down a back stairwell by 2 heavily armed guards and shoved into the back of a bulletproof Maybach. A few seconds later, the door opened and Gabriel Rossi slid in beside me. He brought with him the scent of expensive bergamot rain and cold gunmetal. He didn't speak as the driver pulled away from the underground facility. He just poured himself a glass of amber liquid from the car's minibar and sat back, his dark eyes studying me. I pressed myself against the opposite door, pulling the thin red silk down over my thighs, desperately trying to cover my body. My chest heaved with silent sobs. "Stop trying to hide." His voice broke the silence. It was a deep, raspy baritone that sent a strange shiver down my spine. "I paid $5 million for every inch of you. I expect to see what I bought." Please," I stammered, my voice cracking. "My father, he'll pay you back. Whatever he owes you, he'll find a way." Gabriel let out a short, dark chuckle. It held absolutely no humor. "Your father owes my family $50 million, Clara. He doesn't have it. He's bankrupt. And even if he did, I wouldn't care. I didn't buy you for the money." "Then why?" I whispered, fresh tears spilling over. "To torture me, to send me to him in pieces." Gabriel leaned forward, placing his glass on the console. He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a manila envelope, tossing it onto my lap. "Open it." With trembling hands, I unwound the string and pulled out a stack of papers. On top was a handwritten letter. I recognized the sharp, aggressive cursive instantly. It was my father's handwriting. I began to read. "Gabriel, I need more time. The SEC is freezing my domestic accounts, but I can offer you collateral. My daughter Clara, she lives at 42B Astoria Boulevard. She takes the subway home at 6 p.m. every day. She's young. Take her. Do what you want with her. Put her to work, sell her, I don't care. Just give me 30 days to wire the funds." The air rushed out of my lungs. The world tilted violently on its axis. "Take her. Do what you want with her." I don't care. My own father. The man who taught me how to ride a bike. The man who sat by my bed when I had the flu as a child. He hadn't just failed to protect me. He had explicitly sold me to a monster to save his own pathetic life. He had given them my address. He had handed me over to be used and discarded. A choked, guttural sob ripped from my throat. The paper slipped from my fingers as I doubled over, clutching my stomach. I was crying so hard I couldn't breathe. The betrayal was an acid burning through my veins, incinerating everything I thought I knew about my life. I expected Gabriel to laugh. I expected him to mock my pain, to remind me that I was garbage unwanted, even by my own flesh and blood. Instead, a warm, heavy hand settled on the back of my neck. I flinched violently, but his grip remained firm, not painful, just an immovable weight. "Breathe, Clara," he ordered softly. "He sold me." I gasped out, my face buried in my hands. "I'm nothing to him. I'm nothing to anyone." "You are not nothing," Gabriel said, his voice lowering to a dangerous purr. "You are mine." The drive to his compound in the Hudson Valley took an hour. By the time we arrived, my tears had dried, leaving behind a hollow, aching void. The estate was a sprawling fortress of stone and glass, surrounded by 10-foot-high electrified fences and armed patrols. Gabriel led me inside. The interior was impossibly modern, and cold black marble steel fixtures and minimalist furniture. It looked exactly like the man who owned it. "Maria," Gabriel called out. A middle-aged woman in a housekeeper's uniform scurried into the foyer. "Take Clara to the East Wing. Have some clothes sent up for her." He paused, his dark eyes sweeping over my curvy frame, lingering on my hips and the swell of my breasts beneath the ruined silk. "Make sure they fit properly. Nothing tight, nothing restrictive. And bring her some food." Maria nodded quickly. "Yes, Mr. Rossi." Gabriel turned back to me. "You will not leave the East Wing. You will not attempt to contact the outside world. If you run, my men will shoot you in the legs and drag you back. Do you understand?" I nodded numbly. "Good." He stepped closer, towering over me. He reached out his knuckles, brushing against my tear-stained cheek. The contrast of his calloused skin against my soft flesh made my breath hitch. "Your father thought he was tossing me a piece of trash to buy himself time. He thought I would lock you in a basement and send him pictures of your suffering." Gabriel leaned down his lips, hovering mere inches from my ear. But Arthur made a miscalculation. He whispered, his hot breath sending a violent tremor through my body. He didn't realize that I don't throw away my possessions, and he didn't realize that I have a distinct weakness for soft things. He pulled away, his eyes blazing with a possessive fire that terrified me far more than the guns of his guards. "Get some sleep, Clara. Your old life is dead. Tomorrow your punishment begins." But as I lay in the massive, king-sized bed in the East Wing later that night, wearing an oversized cashmere sweater Maria had brought me, I couldn't stop thinking about the way he had touched my cheek. I was a hostage. I was collateral. I was supposed to be punished for my father's sins. But as the days turned into a week, the punishment never came. Instead, I was fed lavish meals. I was given books, canvases, and paints. Gabriel visited me every evening. He never touched me inappropriately, but he would sit in the corner of my gilded cage, drinking whiskey, just watching me. His gaze was heavy, tracking my every movement. He seemed fascinated by my curves, by the way my flesh moved. Every time I tried to hide myself, to pull a blanket over my thighs or cross my arms over my stomach, he would command me to stop. "Don't hide from me," he would say, his voice thick with a dark hunger. I paid for it all. The true twist wasn't that my father had sold me. The true twist was that the most dangerous mafia boss in New York was becoming obsessed with the fat, invisible girl he had bought for revenge, and I was terrified to admit that the longer I stayed in his cage, the less I wanted the door to open. By the end of my first month at the Hudson Valley estate, my gilded cage had become a sanctuary. The outside world, the sneers of the Manhattan elite, the suffocating disappointment of my father, the invisible small life I had led, felt like a lifetime ago. Gabriel Rossi didn't treat me like a prisoner, nor did he treat me like a Mafia bride. He treated me like a masterpiece he had commissioned, watching me with a dark, terrifying reverence. One evening in late November, the snow falling heavily outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, I was in the makeshift studio he had built for me, off the master suite. I was wearing one of his heavy cotton dress shirts. It barely buttoned over my breasts and stopped mid-thigh, leaving my thick legs bare. I was deep into restoring a damaged 18th century oil canvas he had sourced from an estate sale in London. I heard the heavy oak door open, the familiar scent of bergamot and cold winter air flooding the room. Gabriel stepped inside, shrugging off a bespoke Tom Ford overcoat. His knuckles were bruised. There was a faint smear of blood on his left French cuff. He poured 2 fingers of Macallan 25 from the crystal decanter on the side table and sat in the leather armchair in the corner. He didn't say a word. He just watched me, my skin heated under his gaze. I tried to pull the hem of the shirt down over my thighs, a nervous habit I couldn't break. "Stop!" Gabriel commanded, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in my chest. I froze the paintbrush hovering over the canvas. It's riding up. "Let it," he said, taking a slow sip of his scotch. He set the glass down and stood, crossing the room with that silent, predatory grace. He stepped behind me, his chest brushing against my back. I stopped breathing. You spend so much time trying to shrink Clara, trying to hide the body God gave you. Why? Because I know what people see, I whispered, staring blindly at the wet paint. I know what my father saw. Excess. A failure of discipline. A joke. Gabriel's large hands settled on my hips, his thumbs pressing into the soft flesh of my stomach through the thin cotton shirt. A violent shiver racked my frame. "Your father is a blind, pathetic fool who worships spreadsheets and starved plastic women," Gabriel murmured, his lips brushing the shell of my ear. "Do you know why I really paid $5 million for you, Clara?" I turned my head slightly, my heart hammering against my ribs. "To punish him. To take his leverage." "No," Gabriel said softly. "I could have killed Arthur Pendleton in the lobby of his precious Goldman Sachs building if I wanted revenge. I bought you because of the Metropolitan Museum of Art." I gasped, spinning around to face him. He didn't step back, forcing me to look up into those obsidian eyes. 6 months ago. Gabriel continued, his gaze dropping to my lips. There was a private viewing of a restored Caravaggio. I was there with the mayor. You were there, standing in the corner, holding a clipboard, wearing a hideous grey sweater that was 3 sizes too big. You were so completely absorbed in the brush strokes of that painting, so oblivious to the billionaires in the room. You looked perfect, soft, real. I had my men run a background check on you that night. My mind spun. You knew who I was before the auction. I knew everything. Gabriel confessed, his hands sliding up to cup my face. When Arthur lost my money in that Cayman Islands offshore account, I didn't care about the $50 million. I cared that he owed me. When he offered you to the auction block as collateral, he thought he was playing a desperate hand. He didn't know he was handing me exactly what I wanted on a silver platter. Tears pricked my eyes. Not tears of fear, but of an overwhelming, terrifying realization. He hadn't bought a victim. He had claimed an obsession. Before I could speak, the glass of the studio window shattered inward with a deafening crash. "Get down!" Gabriel roared. He tackled me to the hardwood floor just as the deafening rat-tat-tat of automatic gunfire tore through the room. the canvas I had been working on shredded into ribbons. Plaster rained down from the ceiling as bullets chewed through the walls. Gabriel's heavy body covered mine, entirely shielding my flesh with his own. He pulled a matte black Glock 19 from his shoulder holster. "Maria, the panic room," he yelled into a comms device on his wrist. "Breach on the east wing. Neutralize them." "Gabriel," I sobbed, clutching his shirt as the world exploded around us. "Stay on the floor. Do not move," he ordered. His eyes were no longer those of a lover. They were the eyes of a killer. He rolled off me, using the heavy mahogany desk for cover, and returned fire. The deafening cracks of his weapon made my ears ring. I crawled backward, pressing myself into the corner, my chest heaving. Through the broken window, I saw 3 men in tactical gear scaling the lower balcony. Gabriel didn't hesitate. He moved with lethal precision, dropping 2 of the men with clean shots to the head before they could even unclip their harnesses. The 3rd man managed to dive through the window, rolling across the glass-covered floor. He raised his weapon, pointing it directly at Gabriel's back. "Gabriel," I screamed. Without thinking, I grabbed the heavy crystal Scotch decanter from the side table and hurled it with all my might. It struck the assassin squarely in the side of the head. The heavy baccarat crystal shattered, and the man staggered his shot, going wild, embedding itself in the ceiling. Gabriel spun around and put 2 bullets into the man's chest. The room fell deathly silent, save for the howling winter wind rushing through the broken window. Gabriel stood over the dead men, his chest heaving. He walked over to the man I had hit with the decanter and ripped the black tactical mask off his face. I gasped, pressing my hands to my mouth. I knew that face. It was Dominic Moretti, the underboss of the Moretti crime family, the Rossi family's oldest and most violent rivals in New York. Gabriel stared at the body, his jaw ticking. He reached into the dead man's tactical vest and pulled out a burner phone. He pressed a button, scrolling through the recent messages. When Gabriel looked up at me, the cold fury in his eyes made my blood run cold. "Your father," Gabriel said, his voice terrifyingly calm, "didn't just sell you to me to buy time, Clara. He sold me to the Morettis to clear his debt. He gave them the layout of this estate. He used you as the bait to make me drop my guard." The aftermath of the attack was a masterclass in organized violence. Within 48 hours, Gabriel's men had dismantled the Moretti family's operations from Queens to Staten Island. The streets of New York ran red quietly and efficiently, hidden beneath the veneer of corporate accidents and sudden disappearances. But Gabriel saved the true reckoning for the man who orchestrated it all. It was a Tuesday evening exactly 2 months after the auction, when Gabriel led me down into the subterranean levels of the estate. The air grew colder, smelling of damp concrete and rust. "You don't have to do this," Gabriel said, pausing outside a heavy steel door. He was wearing a dark, tailored 3-piece suit, looking every inch the ruthless Don. "I can handle him. You never have to see him again." I looked down at myself. I wasn't wearing an oversized sweater or a humiliating silk slip. I was wearing a custom-made emerald green wrap dress from Oscar de la Renta that hugged every curve, every roll, every soft part of my body. For the first time in my life, I felt the heavy, undeniable weight of power. "No," I said, my voice steady. "He needs to see me." Gabriel smiled, a dark, proud curve of his lips. He unlocked the heavy steel door and pushed it open. The room was lit by a single harsh fluorescent bulb. In the center, strapped to a steel chair, was Arthur Pendleton. He was battered, his expensive Brioni suit torn and stained with sweat and blood. His face was bruised, and he looked smaller, older, and entirely pathetic. When he heard the door open, he snapped his head up. His eyes widened as they landed on me, then darted to Gabriel, who stood imposingly at my side, his hand resting possessively on the small of my back. "Clara," my father choked out his voice, raspy. Clara, thank God. Tell this animal to let me go. I'm your father. I walked slowly toward him, the clicking of my heels echoing off the concrete walls. I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel the desperate childhood need for his approval. I just felt a cold, clinical disgust. You sold me at a meat market. I stated my tone utterly devoid of emotion. You wrote a letter telling him to use me, to sell me, to do whatever he wanted with me. And then you gave my location to a hit squad. Arthur strained against the zip ties. I had to. They were going to kill me, Clara, the SEC, the feds, the Morettis. I was drowning. I made a deal to save the family name. I knew Rossi wouldn't kill you right away. I just needed time to re-leverage the assets. The family name. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. There is no family name, Arthur. There is only a coward who couldn't balance his books. You ungrateful bitch. He spat his desperation, turning to vicious rage. I fed you. I housed you. I paid for your pathetic little art degrees. Look at you. You're a fat, useless embarrassment. If it wasn't for me, you'd be nothing. Gabriel moved so fast it was a blur. He drew his weapon and jammed the barrel directly under my father's chin, forcing his head back. Say another word to my future wife. Gabriel snarled, the safety clicking off with a loud metallic snap. And I will paint this floor with your brains. Arthur froze, his eyes bulging in terror as he looked from the gun to Gabriel's face. Wife, she is the Donna of the Rossi Syndicate. Gabriel stated, his voice ringing with absolute authority. Every bank account, every shell company, every piece of property you once owned has been legally transferred into her name. You have nothing, Arthur. You are less than dirt. Gabriel slowly lowered the gun, turning to look at me. The violence in his eyes melted into a profound, terrifying devotion. He handed me the heavy Glock. Here is your blood, Clara, Gabriel said softly. The verdict is yours. Give the word, and he breathes his last breath right now. Or give the word, and I hand him over to the federal authorities with a bow on top. He'll spend the rest of his life in a maximum security cell for money laundering and conspiracy to commit murder. It's your choice. You are the queen here. I took the heavy weapon from his hand. I looked at the man who had broken me down for 24 years. The man who had made me hate the body I lived in. The man who had tried to sell my life for a ledger entry. I looked at my father and I saw nothing but a ghost. I handed the gun back to Gabriel. Let the feds have him, I said coldly. Death is too quick. Let him rot in a concrete box, knowing that the fat, useless daughter he threw away now owns his entire world. Arthur screamed in rage and terror, thrashing against his restraints as Gabriel signaled for his men to come in and drag him away. Gabriel turned to me, wrapping his strong arms around my waist, pulling my soft, thick body flush against his hard muscle. He buried his face in my neck, inhaling deeply. My beautiful queen, he murmured, his lips pressing against my collarbone. No one will ever look down on you again. I will burn down the entire city before I let anyone make you feel small. I wrapped my arms around his neck, finally letting go of the invisible girl I used to be. The auction was meant to be my destruction. But standing there in the arms of a monster who worshipped the very ground I walked on, I knew the truth. He hadn't bought a prisoner. He had bought an empire, and he had given it all to me. Wow, talk about the ultimate glow-up and revenge. Clara really went from being sold by her own father to ruling an entire Mafia empire. If you loved this intense, twist-filled Mafia romance, make sure you smash that like button. Share this story with your friends who love a dark romance where the girl gets the power, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more crazy, dramatic, real